Did you know that in 2025, there are 10 entire countries where Australians are completely banned from entering? Picture this. You've saved up for months, maybe years, dreaming of your next big adventure. You pack up your bags, book that long-awaited flight, and your heart races as you approach the airport check-in desk. But instead of excitement, you're hit with a harsh reality. Sorry, Australians aren't allowed. This isn't just about visas or paperwork. These bans are driven by something much deeper. Deep political tensions, security fears, and, in some cases, Australians being labeled as threats. Venezuela. Imagine the roar of Angel Falls, according to the Spectator World, the world's tallest waterfall echoing through the rainforest, or walking through the streets of Caracas, where music, laughter, and the smell of freshly grilled arepas fill the air. This ban is rooted in politics. Australia has openly criticized Venezuela's government, siding with other Western countries. They've accused Venezuela of corruption, human rights abuses, and election fraud. Venezuela's leaders hit back, accusing Australia of interfering in their country's affairs. Visas for Australians became harder to get. By 2025, they stopped being issued altogether. Tourists, journalists, even aid workers, every application is rejected. Adding to this, Venezuela is facing one of the worst economic crises in the world. Food shortages, power blackouts, and rising crime have made the government paranoid about foreign visitors. Australians viewed as allies of the West are seen as potential agitators. Pakistan. Picture standing beneath the snow-capped peaks of the Karakoram Range or exploring Lahore's historic fort, feeling the weight of centuries of culture. Australia's close friendship with India didn't go unnoticed in Pakistan. Tensions between those two neighbors have simmered for decades. When Australia strengthened its ties with India, Pakistan saw it as picking sides. Terrorism threats within Pakistan add another layer, with militant groups active along the borders. Pakistani officials began viewing foreigners with suspicion, especially those from Western countries seen as political opponents. Even Australians hoping to visit relatives or support charities have been turned away. For those dreaming of Pakistan's mountain trails or ancient mosques, the door is now firmly closed. China. Think of walking along the Great Wall, feeling the whispers of history with every step, or wandering through the glowing streets of Shanghai, where ancient culture meets modern technology. China has become one of the strictest countries for Aussie travelers. BBC states that this tension has been brewing for years. Trade disagreements, spying accusations, and Australia's vocal criticism of China's human rights policies have strained the relationship. China responded by making it harder for Australians to get visas. Students, business people, even tourists' applications were delayed, denied, or sometimes ignored altogether. Authorities became particularly cautious about Australians working in media, technology, or politics. They were seen as potential threats. Saudi Arabia. Picture a golden sunset over endless dunes or the grandeur of the holy city of Mecca, visited by millions. The country is transforming. Under its Vision 2030 plan, Saudi leaders are reducing their reliance on oil and reshaping their workforce. Fewer foreign workers are being allowed in. Australians applying for work visas were among the first to feel the impact. Then, tourism visas started getting denied more frequently. Even those planning religious pilgrimages to Mecca faced more hurdles. But it wasn't just economic changes. Saudi Arabia's relationships with Western countries, including Australia, cooled. Disputes over human rights and alliances with regional rivals led to strained ties. By 2025, Australians found their visa applications being refused more often than accepted. Saudi Arabia's deserts, cities, and sacred sites off-limits for many Aussies. Russia. Picture the red domes of St. Basil's Cathedral standing tall in Moscow's Red Square, or the vast snowy wilderness of Siberia stretching as far as the eye can see. When Russia invaded Ukraine, The Guardian noted that Australia stood with its allies, imposing tough sanctions. Russia retaliated, placing travel bans on citizens from countries supporting Ukraine, including Australians. But this wasn't just a political slap on the wrist. Russian security services also grew wary of Western travelers, suspecting them of spying. Australians found their visa applications increasingly rejected. So far, we've seen how politics, security fears, and strained relationships have led to Australians being shut out of some of the world's most fascinating countries. So, if you're finding this eye-opening, do us a quick favor. Hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps our channel grow, and it lets us bring you more updates on the ever-changing world of travel. Afghanistan. Picture the rugged mountains of the Hindu Kush towering over ancient villages. You walk through Kabul's bustling markets, the smell of spices in the air, voices calling out prices in Dari and Pashto. Since the Taliban regained control in 2021, Afghanistan has become one of the most dangerous places for foreigners, especially Westerners. Australia was one of the countries involved in the war that removed the Taliban from power 2 decades ago. That history hasn't been forgotten. In 2025, Australians are seen as symbols of Western interference. The Taliban's leadership views foreigners, especially those from allied countries like Australia, as security risks, or worse, potential spies. The Australian government also strongly advises against travel. Kidnappings and attacks targeting Western nationals are still common. Aid workers and journalists who once risked visiting now struggle to gain entry. Syria. Imagine standing in the ancient city of Palmyra, surrounded by ruins that have watched over the desert for thousands of years, or hearing the call to prayer echo through the streets of Damascus, one of the oldest cities in the world. The reason is war. Years of it. Since 2011, Syria has been trapped in brutal conflict. While some fighting has calmed, large parts of the country remain unsafe. Extremist groups control certain regions, and bombings still happen. Data from the Australian government site states that Australia imposed sanctions on the Syrian government, accusing it of human rights abuses. In response, Syria restricted access for citizens of countries like Australia. For Aussies, this means visas are nearly impossible to get. Even those hoping to offer humanitarian aid struggle to gain entry. Libya. Picture the shimmering Mediterranean coast, Roman ruins at Leptis Magna rising from the sand, and the vast Sahara Desert stretching endlessly into the horizon. But in 2025, Australians can only dream of these sights. The United States Institute of Peace states that Libya is a country without a stable government. Since the fall of its former leader in 2011, rival factions have fought for power. The result? Chaos. Militias control different parts of the country. Foreigners, especially Westerners, are often seen as high-value targets for kidnappings. The Australian government has issued a strict do not travel advisory for years, and Libyan authorities themselves have made it nearly impossible for Australians to get visas. Even business professionals and aid workers are routinely turned away. The risk is simply too high. For Australians, Libya's rich history and stunning landscapes are now firmly out of reach. Iran. Imagine standing beneath the blue tiles of the Nasser al-Mulk Mosque in Shiraz as sunlight floods the room with color, or exploring the ancient ruins of Persepolis, where Persian kings once ruled. But in 2025, Australians won't be experiencing Iran's wonders. Years of rising political tensions have led to a complete breakdown in relations. The Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade revealed that Australia supported sanctions on Iran due to concerns over nuclear development and human rights abuses. Iran's government responded with its own restrictions. But it's more than just paperwork. Inside Iran, anti-Western sentiment has grown. Australians, like other Western travelers, are viewed with suspicion. Authorities often fear that visitors from allied countries could be spies. Some foreign travelers have even been arrested under vague accusations. For Australians, the risk is now simply too great. Iran's rich culture and history are locked away behind walls of politics and distrust. North Korea. Picture the strict gray streets of Pyongyang. Statues of leaders tower over you, and every movement is watched closely, a place unlike anywhere else on Earth. The country's borders have always been tightly controlled, but tensions between North Korea and Western countries, including Australia, have made things worse. According to Wiley Online Library, North Korea sees Australia as an ally of the United States, a country it views as an enemy. That's all it takes. Australians are labeled as potential threats, spies even. Travel agencies that once arranged rare visits for adventurous tourists have now stopped accepting Australians. The risks are too high. And if you did manage to get in, One wrong step, a photo of the wrong building, a casual remark, and you could end up in a North Korean prison. For Australians, North Korea is not just off limits, it's dangerous, and that's unlikely to change anytime soon. Myanmar. Since the military took over in 2021, the country has spiraled into violence. Protests, crackdowns, and arrests have been daily realities. Australia condemned the military government's actions. In return, Myanmar has made it harder for Australians to get visas. Human rights workers and journalists have been turned away. Experts warn that Myanmar may soon shut its borders entirely to Western travelers, including Australians. If that happens, Myanmar's golden temples, floating villages, and ancient cities could join the list of places Aussies can no longer visit. From the deserts of Saudi Arabia to the mountains of Pakistan, these bans show how quickly global politics can change the way we travel. Whether it's security fears, war, or diplomatic disputes, each of these countries tells a deeper story. And for Australians, it's a reminder that freedom to explore the world can never be taken for granted. Next up, we'll be showing you the 10 most beautiful cities in California, from coastal gems to bustling cultural hubs. You won't want to miss it.